Hey there, this is the Resistor Vic podcast. I'm here to get folks thinking about politics as something that's really about regular people like you and me, and to realize that together we can make a difference. I'm Vic Myers. Welcome to the Resistance. So I've got a great guest tonight, but before I get to him, I want to share something with you guys that happened to me today. Now, I live in a small town in a geographically large but population small county. We've got 10,000 people in the whole county. And yet we had 3 or 4 people from this county, and I think they were all from Trinidad, who were charged with the January 6th insurrection. I didn't know who any of these people were. So every week I go to a particular business in town. No, not a pot shop. That's not my thing. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But I meet the folks there. We chat, we have good conversations, and I like them all. And then today I was asking one of them, I said, "Are you registered to vote?" And he's like, "No, I'm not. I got a criminal record, and, it was all nonsense. And, I even got a presidential pardon." And I was like, "Wait, what? Tell me it wasn't for January 6th. He's like, "Yeah, it was. But I just walked in with a hot dog, and, I was just there. It wasn't no big deal." The fact that I've been chatting with this guy for so long, and I liked him, and he seemed like a pretty nice guy, and it's got so many things going on in my head. It's going to take me days to figure out how I feel about all this. And when he said it wasn't really any big deal, that's just beyond the pale for me. But anyway, my guest tonight is Alex Kelloff. He is running for Congress in Congressional District 3 in Colorado, which means he's going to be my congressman. So I really get to see if I can find some good questions. That's the district that Boebert came into Congress in. And our current congressman, he's kind of a tool. But anyway, we're going to talk more about Alex. So Alex, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Mr. Vic. Thanks for having me.
And look, we've already got there's someone from Montrose right there. Hi, Kendra. Where do we begin? Who is Alex Kelloff?
Well, let me say again, thanks for having me on, Vic. I appreciate it and looking forward to a great conversation. So I am the son of lifelong public servants. I know your family has a long history of service as well. My dad has worked for the federal government for going on 60 years. He'll be 83 in a month, and he still goes to the office almost every day. My mom worked at the Smithsonian for 40 years, and I'm the product of the public school system. My great-grandfather on my father's side and his 3 brothers immigrated to close to where you're at. They immigrated to Trinidad, Colorado in 1893. They came like a lot of families back then to dig coal because that's what the good jobs were. My grandfather dug coal, and then he decided to start a grocery store chain and the unfortunate timing of the Great Depression. So he started a grocery store chain called Kelloff's Food Markets through Southern Colorado in 1933. So my dad grew up in the San Luis Valley. My mom's side of the family, my mom went to high school in Grand Junction. Her father was a tile layer who worked for himself. He actually helped build the first house in Vail, Colorado in 1962 and thought, wow, these mountain towns are going to be good for my business. So he and my grandmother settled in the Roaring Fork Valley in the 60s. When I was growing up, I spent every vacation holiday in the district in CD3, Congressional District 3. As I said, I grew up in the public school system, got a business education, worked in the telecommunications industry. My entire career, I've never run for public office. I've always been in business. I was fortunate to do well in business through a 30+ year career in telecommunications. And then, look, I'm running because I care about the district. I care about Colorado. This is where my family's from, going back over 130 years, as I said. And when Donald Trump got reelected in November of 2024, I knew I had to get involved. So I announced my candidacy in late April of 2025 last year. I got in early because I wanted to establish, name recognition. No one knew who I was, of course, having never run for public office. We've been at it for 10 months. You mentioned Congressional District 3 is a huge district. It's one of the largest in the country, 53,000 square miles, 27 counties. And I made it a goal, but before the end of last year, to get to all 27 counties. And I'm proud to say we did that.
Since you're bringing up the size, and I've got these ready, folks, this is Congressional District 3. For those who can watch, so a lot of the people listening won't be able to see any of this, but this is the whole state of Colorado, and basically everything on the left, and then it comes over here to a good chunk of the southern right side of the state. That's Congressional District 3. And to give you an idea of how far you have to travel to go from Trinidad to Fruita or near Grand Junction, that's 6 hours of driving. To go from Trinidad to the farthest place in the state, farthest place in the district, Elk Springs, that's almost 8-hour drive. So Alex is going to be putting in some serious road time.
And I would just add, Vic, that's if the roads are clear. It's be a lot longer than that in the wintertime.
Yeah, when we get close to the election, you're going to be driving in a lot of snow.
Yeah.
So how does your family feel about this?
They were definitely hesitant with me jumping in, but I think, like I'm sure your family is, Vic, with you running for House District 47, are proud of what you're trying to do and doing it for the right reasons. So they've come around. They're proud of me. They worry about, being on the road so much in this vast district, but they're proud and they're happy that I'm doing it. And I think they know that I'm doing it for the right reasons.
I've got to ask you about this, because when I first heard about you from our local county chair, the impression that I got from the way she was telling me about you was you were a tech billionaire. You're not a tech billionaire, right? You've done well, but you're not a tech billionaire.
I am not a tech billionaire, no.
But your background, I was looking at your website, and you've got a lot of background in telecommunications. Did I frame that right?
Yes, that's right.
So one of the things that has drove me crazy over the last, 10 years or so, is the number of politicians, whether it be for governor or for Congress or for president, who say, we've really got to do something about rural internet access.
Yep. And
then they tell us that they pass these bills for rural internet access. Well, guess what? Rural internet access still sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Gay, thoughts on that?
Yeah. So that's, my career was built in the telecommunications industry. A lot of my experience is bringing rural broadband networks infrastructure to the rural areas to provide internet access. And I think exactly what you just said, over time, actually within the Biden administration, the bipartisan infrastructure bill was passed that allocated a number of federal grants and money to build out more rural broadband access so we could ensure that health clinics, homes, farms, ranches, hospitals, small businesses had access to the internet. Trump administration has curtailed a lot of that and sort of redone it, like they've pulled funds from the states, like they've done across many different industries, healthcare being probably the one that comes top of mind. But that is a serious continued area that we need to invest in. I'm sure we'll get into it, and I'll talk more about, like I know, Vic, you very much care about, is investing in our local communities and investing in the critical infrastructure. That is a true investment that over time shows that return on investment for the whole community, whether that be things like roads and bridges, reservoirs, dams, but also telecommunications infrastructure. So I wholeheartedly agree with you. I hate to say it, but as I drive around the district, probably 70% of the time when I'm driving that vast map that you just showed on the screen, I don't have cell phone service. So I just recently got Elon Musk's Starlink. I hate to give him the money, but I got to say it works. It works well, but we need to ensure our local communities and our rural areas are tied into broadband internet.
Bernie had an idea when he was running for president. He was like, we've got post office everywhere. We can make post office hubs for internet service and small banks for rural communities. It's like, it's such a simple solution. I don't know why we don't go there, but I am curious, since you're in the field, because I think about this a lot, about, getting that internet service out of here. I think about how we don't have the infrastructure to take advantage of our wind and solar. Mm-hmm. I can drive up just north of here. There's a bunch of windmills, and it could be a windy day and they're not turning because we don't have the transmission lines to carry all the power they'd be generating.
Yep.
So, and then you look at fires that are started because the lines that are in the trees and the wind blows and all that stuff. So why don't we bury the lines? We could bury the lines and bury fiber optic cables along with it and get access to everybody that way. Is that a plausible thing, or is that an obviously bad idea?
When we've built out to rural areas, or for that matter, urban areas, oftentimes we will bury the lines for the internet. So that's typically fiber optic cable. Sometimes it's more cost effective to string them across telephone poles. It really just depends on the geography, the cost to build that infrastructure. But I think your point to, whether it's solar or wind, one of the major issues in this district in particular, but also across the country at the moment, is the Trump administration trying to keep coal plants open. And in this third district, we have two that have been earmarked for a long, long time, multiple years, that had said, we're going to shut down the coal generating electrical plant in Craig, Colorado, which is in the north. And then closer to you, Vic, the Comanche plant in Pueblo. And the amazing thing is they have all this utility infrastructure there on site, but there's been no plans as to what to do with that infrastructure that already exists. So why don't we, if we're going to decommission the coal plant, which I'm entirely in favor of, we can talk about why that is. But the point being is, like, why aren't we putting up solar and or wind and or geothermal there and utilize the infrastructure that's already been invested in over the last probably 40 years, both with respect to Craig and Comanche? We have that infrastructure. Let's use it.
One of the things that I hear more and more people pushing for solar, and I haven't done all the math yet, but I did some of the math the other day. A nuclear power plant. What did I just say? Solar? I meant to say nuclear. A lot of people are pushing more and more for nuclear. And I'm thinking, let's see, it takes 15 years to build a nuclear power plant if we started today. And it costs somewhere around $35 billion. For $25 billion, we could buy a power wall and put it in every household in Colorado. And they would be generating savings from the get-go instead of waiting 15 years. And then once that nuclear plant's built, then we still have to maintain it and operate it and all that stuff. So I would really like to see us start thinking outside the box a little bit and say, what if we put batteries in all the homes? That solves a lot of the question of storage.
Yeah. And I think part of the question that has to be addressed is, where does that base load for the utility infrastructure come from that then would enable the charging of the batteries? And I'm not against nuclear, but I wholeheartedly share your view. It takes 15 to 20 years, massive cost. I don't think we've ever developed a nuclear power plant in this country that didn't have significant overruns. What I would like to see, in other countries have done this, where they planned multiple nuclear reactors throughout their countries to be built at one time. And then there were lessons learned and best practices established as they were building those. So it actually made it much more efficient to build them and ensure that they were online, on time, on cost, on budget, et cetera. So I think we're looking at an energy future that is more energy intense, but it needs to be a no electron left behind, all the above solution. We need solar, we need wind, we need clean nuclear. We need to figure out how we would store the nuclear waste, obviously, and do so safely, we need to look at geothermal, of which we have some of that in abundance in this, particularly in northwestern Colorado. So we just need to be smarter about how we go about doing this. And when you look at this administration, has put moratoriums on solar and wind just because Donald Trump doesn't like the look of the windmills. I mean,
because they put one next to his golf course in Scotland.
Exactly. So, I mean, that's the wrong direction. He's taking us in the wrong direction.
I actually didn't intend to ask about any of that solar or electrical infrastructure stuff. I don't know how I got there. Wasn't in my notes. But what I do want to ask you, because every candidate who gets in front of any camera anywhere wants an opportunity to say, this is what I'm running on. So what are you running on?
I appreciate it. So obviously I'm talking a lot about infrastructure and my background in infrastructure. I'm very much focused on the cost of living, which has gotten out of control, and also good jobs in the district. As you know, Vic, and probably many of the watchers, listeners tonight know, this is a very rural area. We don't have very many large companies. This is a district that's built on the back of small businesses. Like my family ran their grocery stores for over 70 years in the district. They were small businesses. You treated all your neighbors the same. They were customers. I'm very much focused on creating good jobs by incentivizing small businesses and also building and maintaining, rebuilding the critical infrastructure, some of which we've talked about here, whether that's roads and bridges, internet, broadband, telecommunications, more affordable housing. This creates good jobs, and it'll lower the cost of living and make our communities more resilient to the effects of climate that we've seen. So that's one pillar, and very much sort of almost at the top of my priority list. The other thing is, given the nature of this district, our public lands and our water are critically important. The outdoor recreation industry, which relies on these public lands and water in many cases for anglers, rafting, etc., is something I care deeply about and is under threat from this administration and our current elected representative, Jeff Hurd, who's come out in favor of more natural resource extraction, favoring big oil and gas and the like. So very much focused on protecting our public lands and water and ensuring our water stays in the district and isn't shipped off to places like the Front Range. And then finally, very simply, look, Congress has abrogated its constitutional obligation as a co-equal branch of government. So very much restoring Congress as a co-equal branch, the legislative branch, and ensuring that we uphold the rule. That's what I'm running on. That's what I stand for.
That's a great segue to the things that I really want to talk about. I mean, first, though, let me say to Smoky Top IA, Smoky Topia, 6354, thank you very much for those kind words. Anyway, in any other year in my memory, when it comes to campaign season, we always want to know what somebody's running on. You know, what's the difference between this guy and that guy, and who's going to help my pocketbook? That's the typical year campaign question. And as much as I do care about the things like you're telling me, this year, when we have a federal government that is sending nameless, faceless troops into our cities and shooting people in the face, I can't focus on that stuff. I need to know that we're sending people to Congress who are going to save our democracy, who are going to reassert Congress's constitutional role again. Yep. So, yeah, I want to talk about that some more. And I'm going to pull up something. Do you get emails from Jeff Hurd?
I do. Yeah, the campaign does.
Did you see this one the other day? I'm not going to read the whole thing to y'all, but there was a vote the other day on the tariffs.
Right.
And whether or not Congress was going to reclaim its authority to control tariffs, because the Constitution gives Congress the right to say, control business between foreign countries. And it's only these emergency powers that Trump has dreamed up.
Sure.
And he's got this long email telling us, and this whole email is explaining those constitutional powers, because there was a vote on whether or not to take that power back from Donald Trump. And he's got this long email telling us how important it is for Congress to be Congress and use their own power. But he never tells us how he voted in that email. So I looked it up, and guess what? He did not vote to assert Congress's power. So tell me, future congressman, will you honor the Constitution and reassert Congress's power to do its duty?
Absolutely. And, I mentioned a moment ago about what sort of motivated me to run. The crux of my motivation was when Trump got reelected, I was worried about the direction he would take the country, the chaos he would create, the unlawful actions he would take. And that was in November 2024 when he was elected. Now, he took office, January of last year, and here we are just over 12 months later. I don't have a crystal ball, but when I look at the last 12 months, this is exactly what I was worried about. And this is exactly what motivated me to run, because I full-heartedly believed in the Constitution and the separation of powers. And I can assure all of your viewers tonight that I will uphold the Constitution. I will uphold the rule of law, and we won't have any more of these unlawful ICE actions, unconstitutional executive orders. And, I very much stand for that.
Speaking of ICE, which is another one of the things that I really wanted to get into, is there's the government's under a partial shutdown right now, although I don't think many people can tell. And a lot of it is over ICE. Well, it's basically all over ICE. And the Democrats are saying that they want no more masks. They want body cams. They want IDs, and they want warrants. And some Democrats are saying, you know what? We need to abolish ICE. Where are you on that?
I think it's clear that the American people felt like we didn't have secure borders. And that seems to be the majority of the American people. So, that needs to be respected. And I think Customs and Border Patrol, CBP, and ICE are part of ensuring that we have strong borders. So I do not believe in abolishing ICE. Having said that, what I would like to see, and I wrote an op-ed about 2 weeks ago saying, the budget that has been dedicated to Department of Homeland Security, of which ICE and CBP are part of, would make that institution the 15th largest military in the world, given the budget that they have. What I believe we need to do is not abolish ICE, defund ICE to a major degree, and provide many of those resources, not all, because I don't think we need all of that money towards ensuring our immigration policy. Move that money to local law enforcement who knows the communities better, are more trusted as part of the community. And if they need to work hand in hand with ICE to fulfill the mission of going after people that are here undocumented and committed crimes, I have no problem with that. But the way it's being handled now is not the right solution, not even close to the right solution. It's unconstitutional, it's un-American, and we need to stop it.
I'm gonna differ with you a little bit.
Okay.
I am 100% in agreement with abolishing ICE. Before 9/11, I don't know, you're younger than me. How old were you when 9/11 happened?
Well, I'm 52. I'll be 53 here shortly.
You were in your teens.
No, I was in my 20s.
Were you?
Yeah.
All right. My old math brain's not doing math as good as it used to. Anyway, before 9/11, there was no such thing as the Department of Homeland Security. There's no such thing as ICE. And it had been 14 years, I think, since there was any meaningful, more than 14 years. It'd been closer to 20 years almost since we had any meaningful immigration reform. So instead of updating our immigration policies, we created this monstrosity expansion of our federal government. And I got to tell you, when George Bush, a Republican president, said, we're going to have a Department of Homeland Security, first thing I saw was Russians. That sounded so Russian. But anyway, and then we created ICE, and we started militarizing our police forces across the country.
Yeah.
And to this day, you know, we've got all this crazy stuff going on with ICE and their constitutional violations. And I don't even want to spend the next half hour listing all the problems and horrendous things going on. But what is not happening is I haven't heard a peep out of anybody about doing immigration reform again. The thing that Donald Trump killed during the campaign so that he could do what he's doing now.
I mean, that's a great point, right? There was a bipartisan agreement on immigration reform that was the most extensive immigration reform in decades, if not ever. And it was bipartisan, and Donald Trump killed it.
If we take the entire ICE budget, send those guys back to their wherever rock they climbed out of, and put that entire budget into an immigration process that works, that can vet people coming in, that can have enough judges and attorneys and everything to process people in a timely manner. I was on another podcast the other day, and he was like, why don't we make peace with Cuba and make them an Ellis Island of the Caribbean? Why don't we make a deal, put a Ellis Island in El Paso? We can do these things so that we're processing immigrants. We need the immigrants.
Well, we do. And I mean, but what you're also talking about, that could be Guantanamo Bay, which I know has a bad name after 9/11, but there it is right there. That's in Cuba. That's part of Cuba.
Well, that there's some rich guy who's buying Zorro Ranch in New Mexico. And he's like, well, I just want to bring some light to the darkness. Well, if we can do that with Epstein's Ranch, why can't we turn Guantanamo Bay into an immigrant processing center?
Interesting. I hadn't know that. But by the way, I wholeheartedly agree with you. And that, part of my theme is, in what I stand for, is we need to make these critical investments. Over the last 40 to 70 to 100 years, we invested in this country, right? Whether it was the interstate highway system, whether it was the tunnels that we have that carry water through the mountains and on the western slope here. We used to invest in our communities, and we've stopped doing that, nor have we maintained them by refreshing those investments. And part of those investments are exactly what you're talking about, like invest in the immigration system. Those will be good investments that pay off in the long run. We can bring people here legally. We need immigrants, given our aging population. People want to come here. They want to come here lawfully and legally. We should enable that pathway, and we should do it responsibly. But we need to invest in to do that.
Okay, I promised, we're going to come back to this, but I promised the viewers that I would try and get to some of their questions. And this is a great one because I did a video about it just yesterday. And as a veteran who works with some disabled veterans at work, I don't do work for them. There's just some disabled veterans at where I work. There was a rule yesterday, or not yesterday, what's today? The 20th, the 19th, 2 days ago. 2 days ago, the VA dropped a new rule. And they dropped it without any public comment. And I have no idea if they went through the congressional, oh crap. I don't remember what the rules say. There's a law that says they have to take these rules to the Senate, to the House, and to the Government Accountability Office. It was passed in 1996. But this new rule says they're going to take a disabled veteran, reevaluate them. And if their meds improve their condition, then their new rating will be based on how they are with the meds on board, which is going to reduce veteran disability paychecks for a bunch of veterans.
Wow.
They're gonna have to choose between getting their meds, still getting their meds. Of course, their ratings already changed, so they'll have to wait for another evaluation period. But again, there's things that Congress can do. There's House rules that say, if you were a congressman today, you could go to the Oversight Committee and ask them to bring the head of the VA to Congress to explain this rule and defend it. And if they didn't present this rule before putting it out there with no public comments, then it can be challenged. But somebody brought it up and asked if we'd heard about that. Had you heard about that yet?
I don't think I have, but I appreciate that, and I'll look into it. My as an aside, I have a twin sister, and she was married to an Air Force veteran who served in the first Gulf War, and unfortunately, he worked around a lot of the burn pits, and then came down, acquired cancer many years after that, and sadly passed away about 2 years ago. And I know how difficult it was for him to get care as a veteran. And now, upon his passing, just my sister raising my two young nieces, ensuring that she gets the benefits from the VA, what he was entitled to, what they as a family are entitled to. So that hits close to home. I wasn't familiar with that in particular, but it's something I'll certainly look into.
Yeah, I was talking to a vet the other day who's struggling with cancer and stuff, and he had no idea that the PACT Act was even passed. So I'm like, dude, you need to go look up the PACT Act. You are probably due a lot more than you're getting right now. So we briefly mentioned Epstein. What's your take on all of that right now in Congress? More importantly, Congress and how they're not dealing with it.
I mean, what's there to say? It's absolutely appalling. I'd like to think more and more people are speaking out from the right and even MAGA followers. Sean Ryan, who, has a very popular podcast, was a kind of, I don't know if he styled himself as a MAGA, but he was certainly a Trump supporter. I just saw, I think it was today, he was speaking out against what's going on with what seems to be the continued cover up of Epstein and the Epstein files. So it's horrendous. And it certainly looks like where there's smoke, there's fire. I mean, that's obvious based on what's been released, but it clearly looks like the DOJ has held back probably millions and millions of additional pages of information that haven't been released, even though they were compelled to under a bipartisan law that compelled them to release it. So they're frankly in contempt of Congress right now for not releasing all of it. So, it's a terrible situation, and Congress again needs to ensure they pass this bipartisan legislation for the Epstein files to be released in full and unredacted to the extent they could be. And the DOJ hasn't complied.
So we've talked about Epstein, ICE. We could have talked about the obvious corruption in the Trump White House, the double dealing, the war crimes, shooting people in the ocean, floating on wreckage. There's so much we could talk about, and Congress is not doing anything. But here's my question for you. Are the Democrats in Washington, D.C. doing enough?
I think my honest answer is they're in a tough situation without controlling Congress. That's in part why I'm running. I think we can flip this seat. I think this seat that I'm running in the 3rd District of Colorado is critical to taking back Congress and controlling Congress, where we'll have the levers of power to ensure that these unlawful, again, illegal actions, many of which you just named, can be overturned and rolled back. I think Democratic leadership could be more effective. I don't think that they've approached many of these problems or issues as effective as they possibly could. Now, having said that, I'm not in Congress, so I don't know what I don't know. But I think they could be more effective. But I also would say, I think it's tough without being in control. And that's why we need to take back Congress on November 3rd and take back the Senate as well.
I think you were definitely a teenager during the Clinton presidency.
I was in college.
Were you really? Are you sure you're only 53? Okay, well, then you should remember Newt Gingrich.
I remember Newt Gingrich.
He was the minority leader of the House. He never let being in the minority stop him from wreaking havoc, slowing things down, causing problems. When Mitch McConnell was the Senate minority leader during the Obama years, that didn't stop him from using the rules of the Senate to wreak havoc and slow down progress and prevent a lot of things that Obama wanted to do. So my argument would be that there is a bunch more that Democrats could do to prevent some of the stuff that's going on. And that brings me to my next question that's actually on my list, and it's in my comments too. Should Hakeem Jeffries be the leader? Will you be voting for him to be the next leader when you get elected?
Look, I don't know if it's for me to say at this point in my race. I think, I'll make that decision if and when I'm lucky enough to be elected to Congress. Do I think that there are potentially more effective leaders out there than Minority Leader Jeffries? Probably. But, I don't think I can say one way or the other at this point.
I wish I would have wrote down the name of the guy that's running against him in the primary. Seems like a really smart guy. Anyway, I hate it when I do that. While you were talking, I had this idea, then I sidetracked myself.
Well, you'll get it back.
I'll just leave it with my opinion. He is the least motivating person I've ever seen get in front of a TV camera. We need leaders. We need somebody who can get in front of a camera like Barack Obama. Barack Obama could get up there and talk about a cookie recipe and have people ready to jump up and start baking. Hakeem Jeffries could get up there with the best laid plan in the world and have everybody ready to, take a nap.
Yeah.
We need real leaders, and he is not it.
And to that point, because I get sometimes asked, well, who do you think is going to be president in 2028? Or who are the Democrats going to run that can win? And my answer to that is I don't know. I mean, it's too early.
I don't think that person's on the stage yet.
Yeah, and look where to your point. Look where Barack Obama came from. Right, he was he wasn't at all known until he became a senator, and then he only served one term and became president. So
yeah,
he kind of came out of, to a degree, nowhere, and I have hope that leaders will show themselves and emerge and really can lead the country back to civility, do what's right, follow the Constitution. And I'm not sure we know who that is yet.
No, I don't think that person has emerged on the national stage. I don't think it's Gavin Newsom. I think he's doing a really good job of getting visibility, but we're so far out in so many years. The person at this point who gets all the publicity is not the person who ends up being the nominee.
I wholeheartedly agree with you on it.
So I've got one more big question for you, and then I'm going to give you the last word.
Okay.
All right. So one of the things that a lot of us talk about is there's got to be accountability when this is over. I have my ideas of how to accomplish that. And, some people are talking Nuremberg style trials. There's got to be investigations and accountability for all of the lawlessness that's going on. The covering up for the billionaires in the Epstein files, the ICE actions, the shady contracts that this White House is giving people, the crypto coins. I mean, it's endless. So as a congressman, if the Democrats take control and if they're going to do the right thing, we can't have any more. We just need to move on. We need to move forward. We can't have that. We need accountability for the first time. Didn't get it after Watergate. We didn't get it after the Civil War. We need accountability. So where are you on that, and what would it look like?
So I wholeheartedly agree. These people need to be held accountable. My big concern is that Trump is going to give blanket pardons to his administration, and it will be hard to hold them accountable. Now, there's other ways that they can be held accountable, if not under the law, if they have these pardons. Those pardons don't apply to state laws that may have been broken. So I hope smart attorneys, elected officials are keeping close tabs and records on these officials who are breaking the law and committing unconstitutional acts, so that if they do receive blanket pardons, which I expect that they will, and maybe even preemptively, like tomorrow, from the Trump administration, that they can be held accountable. I do think moving forward, and there's some talk about this in Congress right now, including some Republicans supporting it, to change the pardon power so that the president just couldn't give blanket pardons when it was clear that laws were being broken and criminal offenses were happening. So I hope that we are keeping account and track of the laws that are being broken, and we can find ways of holding these people accountable, whether it's through hearings. But I do have a concern that this administration, Trump, is going to give blanket pardons, and it will be harder to hold those people accountable without a constitutional amendment to change the pardon power.
Well, let's suppose he does give the blanket pardons. Does that stop the investigations?
It shouldn't, but I'm also not for investigations just to create a media spectacle. Like, I am all for investigations to the extent that at the end of those investigations, there will be repercussions from those. And so whether that's charging people with state crimes or other ways of ensuring that they're held accountable, I'm for that. But I'm not for endless witch hunt that, don't have an end to them with no repercussions.
Well, I could go on that single subject for a long time.
We should take that offline, because I'd love to hear your thoughts on it as well. But
one question up here mentioned AIPAC. Are you taking PAC money?
No, I've taken no AIPAC money. I've taken the only PAC money I've taken was from a senator, Tim Kaine. Tim Kaine's PAC has supported my campaign. I was proud to have Senator Kaine support me. That's literally the only PAC money I've taken. All the money I've raised so far has been from individuals.
Nice. All right. As promised, now I'm going to give you the last word. Anything. Oh, wait a minute. I can't believe we haven't done this. I told you I was going to do it 2 or 3 times at least, and I didn't. I am so sorry. Folks, this is Alex Kelloff's website. Notice there's 2 places with donate buttons. Up there at the top, there's a get involved. If you want to help defeat another MAGA Republican, this is where you go to do it. It's scrolling across the bottom, alexkelloff.com, ALEXKELLOFF. So I'm so sorry, Alex, that
thank you.
Failed to put that up like I typically do. Having said that, what's your last word?
Yeah, well, thanks again, Vic, for having me on, and congratulations and thank you for throwing your hat in the ring and running for House District 47. We need good people like you. Look, I'm doing this for the right reasons. As I said, I've never been involved in politics. I don't feel beholden. I am running as a Democrat and the only Democrat running. I do not have a primary competitor. So it allows me to focus on flipping the seat from incumbent MAGA Jeff Hurd on November 3rd. As I said, my family hails from this district going back over 130 years. They were small business people that looked out for their neighbors, treated everyone the same. I'm focused on the things that people care about when I'm out crisscrossing this enormous district: cost of living, good jobs, the ability for people to raise their kids and fulfill the American dream, focus on protecting our public lands and water, keeping the water in the district. And as we talked about, as we did throughout this conversation, ensuring that Congress upholds its constitutional duty as a co-equal branch of government and upholding the rule of law. So I appreciate everyone's time. I appreciate your time, Vic. I hope that I've earned your vote and hope that I've earned the votes of your listeners and watchers tonight. But as you said, if people want to learn more, it's alexkelloff.com. And I will likely be, for those of you that are in the district, I'll likely be in your hometowns here shortly. We're on the road continuously over the next couple of months. So thanks again, Vic.
I would never vote for Hurd or any Republican, but I'm going to be happy to vote for you for my congressman. Thank you for coming on and giving me a good interview.
Thanks.
And for those of you watching or listening, thank you for making us a part of your day. Well, folks, looks like we're back at the barn and it's time to call it a day. I sure do appreciate you spending your time with me. If you want to help keep this podcast going by supporting me, you can get a paid subscription on Substack, where I'm Resistor Vic. Or if you're the type that'd rather go to PayPal, I'm also resistorvic@gmail.com. Thanks again.